that was you, it might be accurate, I don't know. But you see, yeah. Well, there's first.
I don't think I talked much in that meeting.
Is that the automatic closed captioning? it's doing?
Yeah, that's the closed caption.
I
Not funny.
wonder how that works.
That was all we were talking about. This was what we were working on.
We are connected now this time, maybe.
Daughter's having a issues.
We not have camera. Yes, the camera's on, isn't it?
Oh, I didn't even think it did.
Say, it should be on.
Should be. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
See?
Oh,
Now you can see us.
See you now.
yeah,
Is that okay like that? Hey,
Sure.
like that to you?
that's fine.
Okay.
Mike can be on camera, we can, rest of us don't have to be.
I don't know why it's not moving.
Usually,
Usually it is.
usually it's kind of, should be set to track who's speaking.
The voice, the person.
Setting. I'll be adjust.
I'm also okay with the placement.
Oh, there it goes. It's moving now.
Okay, is it moving?
Now it's on Barb Kelly.
Okay,
Maybe it's just cause we're not on the full screen view.
well,
I don't want to touch anything, honestly.
yeah,
I'm afraid I'm gonna mess it
yeah,
up.
just leave it that way. That's good enough. Okay, well, let's call the meeting to order and get started so that we can
Yes.
get going, and we welcome everyone. And Janessa and Whitney are on video, and we have Laura and Laura here, so we have a quorum. So we can begin, start off with our minutes.
Okay,
Laura?
everybody should have gotten the minutes for, our November 18th meeting. Thanks Vanessa for getting those together. If anybody has any changes to the minutes for November. Motion to accept the minutes.
Second,
Second.
all right, second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, on to operations report, Mr. Kelly.
Applications. LSW 1, CSW 27, LCSW 38. Renewals, LSW 12, CSW 42, LCSW 94. Temporary permits clinical 3. Clinical renewal 4. Non-clinical 3. Contracts approved 72, deferred 0. And sponsorships, I did 2 sponsorships and 1 provider. And our total number of licensees is 7,864.
Okay, thank you.
I renewed my license this month and it went very, very easily. Seamlessly, no problem.
Good, very good, very good. Good. Any questions, Mark? Motion to accept operations report? So moved. Second?
Second,
All right. Motion and second to accept the operations report. All in favor? Aye.
aye,
Any opposed? Okay. All right, and now we're working on the job description for our third position. But we'll have that ready for the next meeting. For our third position, have our job description so that we can approve that for the third position. Okay?
Okay.
As well as working on the annual report draft, so that we'll have that at their next meeting, okay? On to Finance Committee.
All right, so that would be me, reporting on finance. I'm not exactly, it doesn't really matter all that much, but the camera is just like zeroing in on the attorneys. Like I can't see, even though you all are not talking, it's only going to you all. I don't know why it's doing that.
We realize that. but-
Okay. I just wasn't sure if you did. It's just kind of strange. Okay. So as a reminder, our total appropriation for the year is 832. Are you ready for me to go?
Yes, go ahead.
$832,200. The total expenditure year to date is $239,934.31, which leaves us with an unexpended amount of $592,065 and I think 69 cents. So again, one of the things we kind of track is our the rate at which we're using our allocation. We've only used about 29% of our yearly appropriation, but we're 41.7% through the year, so that's good. And that we're not spending money faster than we need to be. The total revenue for the year to date is $259,902.36. So you may note that just if we're only looking at our revenue and expenditures, we're in the black by $19,968.05. So, aside from our appropriation, we are operating in the black as far as expenditures and revenues. The November revenues were $50,635, and the November expenditures were $30,436.63.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Sounds like we're working well within our framework and our finisher sakes waiting. A motion for Dave for today?
So moved.
Not a second. One of you. All right, second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Moving on to the complaint committee.
All right. Hank, you would like me to report on those? Is that
Yes, please.
okay?
Yes, please.
So we have 3 cases to report on today. Case number 2345 relates, the allegations related to 2 things: dual relationships and fraud in billing. Those were the allegations. The committee found that there was insufficient evidence to support the initiating complaint and recommends dismissal.
This was a case we did have our investigator, and we could find not enough evidence to substantiate. So, motion to dismiss. Oops. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, second. Next.
Okay, case number 2471, the allegations related to fraud and misrepresentation and some treatment issues. The committee found on this case as well, there was insufficient evidence to support the initiating complaint, and the committee recommends dismissal.
Questions? Okay. All in favor of dismissal? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Dismissed.
Okay, and then finally, case number 2473, the allegations related to supervisory misconduct. That something happened in a supervision session that led to a supervisee filing a complaint against a supervisor. And the supervisor acknowledged to us what had happened and took accountability for that. So the committee is recommending a 1-year assurance of voluntary compliance. Also that they would transition the CSW supervisee to a new supervisor, and that the supervisor would not have any more new supervisees during that 1 year time period.
Questions?
I have a question, because this is the lawyer, I just wanna make sure that, I had from my notes that there would be no new supervisor for 1 year.
Right.
But they could, and they have no one supervising now,
They have one.
so do they keep the one or do they discharge the one?
They keep
The one and don't take any new.
Okay, that's what I wrote in my notes, thank you.
Oh, so they are gonna stay with the current supervisor, not be assigned to someone else?
No, the new one is they had two. This was from one.
Okay, okay. So the person filing the complaint will be assigned a new supervisor. The other
Yes.
supervisor will be allowed to stay with the supervisor, but they would not take on any additional supervisees.
Correct.
I have a question. Do we not have, I know we have the like renewal for supervisors, like if they want to take the course again, do we not have another sort of training for supervisors? I know we're talking about having different sessions for supervisors with some of the changes we're looking at in the regs, but do we not have currently something like that that exists for when we have issues with supervisors that we could require them to do some additional training?
We could, but we don't have anything specifically set up for that.
Okay, that was my question. I wondered if we have anything that might be something we want to think about.
I think the committee also, in reviewing this case, and I don't disagree at all, this particular supervisor was very clear in acknowledging the behavior that was inappropriate, and sort of explained the context of that and acknowledged it to the supervisee. And so I don't know that we had any major concerns that this would be likely to occur again. It was kind of a specific situation.
Oh, that helps. Thank you, Whitney.
More discussion? All in favor of the 1 year ABC for 2473? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have two cases that the board would like, or recommended from the committee for the board initiating a complaint. We have a CSW practice that looks like for over at least 2 years without an approved contract, and a supervisor who also went along with that, so to speak. So we have two complaints, one for the CSW, one for the supervisor. So it's a board initiating complaint because of the violation of practicing without an approved contract.
So this person had a supervisor, they just didn't submit a contract?
They didn't submit a contract. They had a contract that they submitted when they submitted the application to take the Atlanta CSW exam, but the contract had never been approved.
Their supervised experience documentation form.
Yeah.
And their application to take the exam, and then the contract that should have been submitted from the beginning were submitted together. The end.
The CSW and the supervisor, both, the CSW had gone through the 1 hour training as well as the supervisor going through training, so. Question is, do we initiate the complaint?
Choice, but not to.
It sounds like the tools with the training too, tell you about the process before. Yeah, so
All in favor of initiating the two complaints?
I,
Aye.
Whitney, are you still there?
Sorry, I had muted myself and didn't realize I.
Okay, thank you. Okay, unanimous. All right. Thank you all. All right, that's it for the complaint committee. All right. Now the applications.
We had two cases and Laura is gonna take the first.
yeah, so, the first one, they had given some information regarding, parole, but the parole information is not real clear. Whether it has been, completed, so we would need to defer that case to next month.
Then our second application, is someone who is, recovering, working through what they need to do. But the problem is that they are still gonna be on probation until August of 2025, so we cannot approve this until after they are done with probation.
You want this to be a motion to pass on the board or advisement to the committee?
Advisement.
Yeah.
All right. All right, so. Ordered. All right, old business, the most recent ASWB update included a list of recipients of donations for groups that help with the social work census. So if you'd like to see that list, I've got it here with me, different organizations, NASW, Social Work Foundation Scholarships Fund received, I think, the largest. Yeah, we did $3,843 from ASWB, and then Save the Children received $4,295. So organizations that helped with the census, so it's part of that. That's all I have on ASWB. I didn't know if Whitney or anybody else had anything. Okay. Our application software is still working. We'll have this coming, was it Wednesday, right? We have our follow-up meeting with the test, that we did on the first testing on it. And, so it moves on to the next phase again. We're looking at that being implemented, and first phase of it will be in February. Every licensee who's in the system, we would encourage you to update any information, specifically your email address, so that you can get the email correctly that says activate your account. Because we'll be migrating all the data from our system active licensees, so please do that. Go to the self-service portal and get that changed. And just as a word of caution, when you set up your profile, you will not check the box. Use my email as my username and password. Use my emails as my username. You create one that's not your email. So if you change your email, you don't have to go back and change that on there. So, all right. Social Work Compact, the next meeting is set to be in Lexington, February 4th and 5th. Be at the Council on State Government's office building is where it's going to be located. Be 2 days. It's a long agenda, so we want to make it 2 days. Each board is responsible for the expenses of their commissioner. Bylaws, probably be bylaws, the election of the executive committee, and approving the national tests, and ex officio members of the executive committee. There's 7 commissioners and then 4 ex officio non-voting members on the 11-member executive committee. Nevada, New Jersey and Pennsylvania have pending legislation for joining the compact, so that would, if that gets passed, they would be joining the commission as well. Does look like their process in those states, when I checked, would enable any of them to be represented by February the 4th, but again, as time goes on. So if those 3 legislatures pass, we would have 25 states in compact. So any questions or thoughts, comments?
Moving right along.
Moving right along, just FYI, the LPC, the counseling compact, they are submitting regs for to the state next year. So they're in the process of should be looked like by the end of 25, they will be issuing multi-state license under the counseling compact. Regulations, supervision, we've done all of that. Now we have Mr. Nichols is formulating that for submission. My question on that for the board is whether or not we would like to, once they're formed and everything, send it out to, the existing supervisees to get their input on it before we formally propose it.
I don't think there'd be any harm in that, and I think anytime we solicit input from our licensees, that's increasing transparency, and, I mean, obviously, we'd have to have a parameters around when we would need the feedback by,
Sure.
just so that we can move forward, but I would support the idea of soliciting feedback.
We probably would want to do it after the holidays, so it wouldn't be until January, but kind of push back when we could submit it, but at the same time, we're under no pressure to submit it in any particular deadline, so.
May I ask, do you have the regular function where people sign up to be on a master list to be notified when you do file regulations?
Yeah.
Okay, but, and you want to send a copy, a draft copy to all licensees?
No.
Was that what you're, I missed what you were talking
I was
about.
just suggesting we take some of our approved supervisors and send them the reg as it's drafted, get their input before we submit.
Okay, thank you, clarifying who the recipients were.
Right, not all licensees, it would just be the
Okay.
existing supervisor.
Now, are you sending them to all board approved supervisors or just like?
We
sampling?
take a random selection because a lot of emails.
That's very manageable, very wise to do up front. And then you go through the whole notice and comment process when you file the thing.
Right.
So that the whole world knows,
Right.
let the whole world make comment, and approve it.
But we already get some input from existing supervisors.
I was unclear on your target audience, but that's a good idea.
All right, work on that then. All right, you have the regulation on the continuing education. We've looked at this one before. It's just, again, having it ready so that that's been part of our, we'd like to batch things or have more than one at the same time that we submit. So that's what is there for you. See if there's any changes you want to make on that before we submit it to. Same way with the next one on fees. The only looking in that is that, market, I was thinking that maybe with the temporary license fee, we may need to put that at a different level than our typical 25, because these are tenth people coming from out of state, coming to the state to have a temporary practice rather than $25, making it 75. That might be too big of a jump, but at the same time, that's the big difference in that rate. And again, whether or not that's the, we do have to think about what kind of regs, what kind of fees we're going to charge. We have to have more than one reg.
Are
Kind of
we gonna
what,
have to, I'm sorry. Are we going to have to do another regulation when the state compact comes through?
right, that's the good question, is kind of watching with the what council compact, how they're handling the fee part, because the other part about fees is the fact that the compact will require a background check. And so, it's not like pushing this one into that until we get a little bit of idea, so we can say, whether or not that fee needs to be included here, or can it be included in the rate with the compact. Right now, the council compact looks like that's where the fee is, but it may not be for us. May know more after the be on the fourth, with that commission, so.
Just wondering.
Yeah, oh yeah, good wondering, because no point submitting it unless we can say, yeah, it's not gonna impact us, and I have to change it again, in a few months after we submit it, so. And again, that's not a reg that the continuing education reg is the only one of those three that we have to have done. We have to have filed before October of next year.
Oh, okay, good,
With the other two, we're not on the timeline yet.
good.
So the CE reg is the only one that's coming up with a 7-year deadline.
Well, it's past the 7 year. We got the 18-month extension.
Okay. I'm trying to follow.
Yeah, that's right. We applied to keep the same one, get the 18 months because the whole issue was the telehealth piece of it. So we've got that looked at now, so we can, but that's the only one of those three that we have to get filed. And as long as we get it filed before October, we're good. The same way with the code of ethical conduct. Yeah, we did the research on it, and that's gonna be a big one to tackle, so we're probably gonna start in January with maybe the first two sections and go along and do what we did with the supervision rate, takes the pieces so that we get that done.
We have quite a draft.
I know you all have a draft and,
I've pulled a lot of things together for you from other sources
right, so looking
to
forward.
suggest.
Right, so we can start that process in January, and I would think that we may spend some of our time in retreat this year to go over a good bulk of it. So that we can, because we would have more time at the retreat to do that. So that's my thinking on it, so we would have January, February meeting, then try to do a bulk of it, and then maybe do some other things that we need to do before, after the retreat, and have a more robust presentation. There's another regulation we talked about, which is about the test itself. It's putting that in reg more clearly than we have. That's a whole new reg. It's not something we have to start off with. Again, we can discuss more of that and probably at the retreat.
And that's been drafted. There's a.
Right.
A full draft.
That's all drafted up, so it's ready to go. We would just have to apply to get the number. And,
I think it's ready for the board to review it and pass a vote.
we just
To
want to make,
accept it.
we want to make sure we're coordinating that with the bill that we're, are still discussing to file. So those are the regs that we're on right now. I'll check the regs again to make sure there's anything. I don't think we have anything due until 26. So the code of ethics is due in 26, the supervision reg is due, so we're ahead of schedule to get those. And the fee schedule. Okay. Student intern committee, we haven't met, next meeting is on to January, just for information there. So, we have a sketch, kind of a sketch of outline for the regulation that would go with the student intern license, provisional license, as we're calling it. Was able to meet with the KASWE field directors since our last meeting, and so copies were sent to them for their input. Tony Helm, who is kind of the coordinator for that group, is on our committee, so they will hopefully send things through him to the committee, and we can work on that in January. Thoughts, questions? All right. Next is the bill itself, the legislation. Have one, you should have gotten on the last piece of that bill would be whether or not about the emergency suspension order. We've made some changes to that language since you last saw it. We're still looking at what in the handout you have. Really, the big difference is the last part, number 8, where it kind of basically says the board will, if the board takes, presumably if it's approved by the legislature, then the board would have a consequence if they took action, but court didn't uphold. That's basically what it says. Number 3 on 8B3, follow the bingo thing. May not be necessary. Mark is recommending that we drop that part so we can, but again, it's there. Part of that, the argument was against having it is that it would impact the licensee's livelihood, which it would. So they're, again, acknowledging that the board is accountable for that to the public. And so that's how that worded the way it is. Thoughts?
This is Mark, your lawyer, and the people on Zoom. There are very, very few, if any, fee shifting, legal fee or other shifting mechanisms in Kentucky law in this area. So you put in there a provision that if the board is not upheld, you are entitled to reimbursement up to that amount. If someone says, we like the general concept, but 2,000 is inadequate, I suggest you could go to 5,000, for example, but then make it both ways and say, oh, if the board's not upheld, we'll pay you up to 5,000 for your trouble. Oh, but if we are upheld, you can pay us up to 5,000 for your trouble. That what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's all subject to negotiation. But if people are afraid the board is gonna use and abuse this, and they're gonna lose and not be upheld, and shouldn't have tried it in the first place, there's that mechanism that does protect them.
That's the thought behind that part of it. It's so that it's say. Board is not gonna be, or would be, have a consequence itself, giving ourselves a consequence if it's used wrongly.
Skin in the game.
Yeah, skin in the game. So, you know, again, I mean, the 2,000 is arbitrary, it could go to 5, you know, but like you said, it could be mutual back and forth.
If you're gonna make the stakes that high, if they say, well, 2,000 is adequate for us, we could say, we agree, we'll make it 5,000, but we'll make it work both ways.
Other thoughts?
I just want to add, thank you for your patience. This is truly a tool you need to have in your toolbox.
Do,
Let me bring it.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Do we ever ask for licensees to reimburse the board when we conduct investigations?
Sometimes we have, yes.
Only in a settlement
Oh,
agreement.
in the settlement, yeah.
So what you're proposing, Mr. Bringelman, are you saying that would also be in a sort of settlement agree, like a parallel kind of process, but related to an emergency removal of the license?
I'm not sure what your question is, but
Well,
the idea,
I'm just trying to say, I don't want us to set it, I mean, I think that the intent and the spirit of offering compensation, if we were to suspend somebody's license or remove it or revoke it, whatever it is, and then the court did not uphold our decision, you know, the intent of saying we would provide reimbursement is to show that we're not trying to abuse this in any sort of way, and that we would have consequences if we acted improperly. And I do understand your point that, you know, should we also say that it works the other direction? And if we are out money because of having to put resources into this process and it is upheld, should the licensee have to reimburse us? I understand the intent of it. I'm just not sure. I'm just asking, do we do something similar with other processes where we have to do investigations or, you know, that's not exactly the same. I just don't want it to look like we're trying to be, what am I trying to say? Not predatory, but that we're trying to, I don't know. I don't know if you're understanding my question.
I think I understand your question, and look at the laws you have and how you use them now. If a complaint comes in, it gets investigated, there's an apparent violation of law, and you obtain a settlement agreement, that settlement agreement could include a fine, repayment of board costs, so that the guilty people are paying and defraying that expense of the board. So there is always that process in the regular complaints world. We do not have any ground to ask anybody to do anything. If a complaint comes in, it's responded to, an investigation is done, and the committee on complaints says, we don't think there's enough evidence to support a violation of law, we close this without further action. Then that's just the cost of doing business for the board. The intent in this case is, if someone is concerned about the board abusing this immediate temporary suspension power, and they are abusing it and losing in court or losing in front of a hearing officer, there's a reimbursement mechanism to help make the social worker whole for their trouble.
Right, I understand that part. It's the next part that I wasn't sure about, where we asked them to pay us back.
Well, what I was commenting on was the reimbursement only works one way. If the licensee says, I won, I got a hearing officer to overturn it, you were wrong and never should have brought this to begin with, you pay us $2,000. I would say, well, we were in the right. In other cases, with the shoes on the other foot, if the board is upheld, then you never should have appealed this. You were wrong for dragging this out before a hearing officer. The hearing officer upheld everything. You should pay us $2,000. My suggestion was based on the anticipated criticism that $2,000 was inadequate to make whole a respondent wronged by the board who won in the end. And my response to that might be maybe 5,000 is more adequate, but if you're gonna raise the stakes that high, make it work both ways.
The discussion is, what is kind of like with that 2,000, it's kind of like, where do you put that mark? Where do you
Oh,
put it? You put it?
Again, I'm tracking and I do understand, I understand all of it. I'm just questioning the necessity or, you know, do we also add the part where they have to reimburse us just because we've raised the amount? I mean, can we write the language so that it would say that they would need to demonstrate how much income was lost up to $5,000, not a flat rate of you get $5,000 back if we were wrong.
I
Well,
follow
that
you.
was-
I follow you, Whitney, and I'm also wondering is if we do add the reimbursement piece for the board, maybe that language is constructed to where it says the board could ask for it. So not necessarily do it, but that there is some teeth there. If we use the word could, doesn't mean we would ask for it, but that the option would be there.
Yeah.
That way
Which
we're
is-
not locked in that we have to use that.
Right. Yeah, but, okay, good, thanks, Janessa, because we want to keep in mind, this is an added piece that we will be considering today. It's something totally new. So I'm bringing it to you because we don't even have to include it. We can just leave it out because it's a little complicated to try to figure out all of that. And so we can not even include it because our original proposal, we just leave it stand. We can just say, no, we thought about this, but no, we're not gonna do that part. So you have that option too. So keep that in mind as you're working through this.
Could that discourage somebody from trying to appeal? I mean, somebody who really maybe should appeal and they're afraid to because they don't want to get a fee smacked on them if they.
Mhm.
I know, that's, it kind of is. Hard to really say.
And
Well,
wouldn't-
that's my concern too, is I don't want to deter people from defending themselves appropriately. I mean, I understand there's some bad actors that might try to appeal something that's totally legitimate because they've done something terrible to start with, but there are also other people who I just don't want us to do something that, like Lori said, to deter somebody from pursuing an appeal that might be appropriate.
But likewise, the $5,000 payment mechanism for the board would chill the board. We
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
you know, maybe we should file an immediate suspension against this drunk licensee, but you know, we lost the last two cases and I had to fork over 5,000. Because by the time they got here, they said, I'm all sober now and dried out. I mean, it would chill the board just as much as it would chill them.
But the board isn't coming out of my pocketbook, whereas the
No,
licensee is coming from their personal funding, you know what I mean?
The government's money is a lot more of it and not quite the same as the licensee's money. The government has deeper pockets.
And of course, I would not want to, I mean, wouldn't have used that, but I'm just saying, that, like, I don't think, oh, let's just go ahead and do it. It's not my money that I'm worried about, but you know what I mean? I would be a judicious person thinking about.
Making good decisions and not acting on a whim or.
Yeah.
As I would expect the board always does,
Yeah, exactly.
and they do.
Well, and I would suspect that if there was going to be any pushback from folks, it would be that the last piece that we were talking about. I mean, I would almost see people saying, wow, so that's really not your role, is to get revenue from us in that way. Your role is to protect us, but yet it does, and I agree with Whitney, and I'm not sure it's the right word, but it almost does feel a little predatory. Again, I don't know if that's the right word, but it kind of does feel that way.
So it's just an idea that we don't want to do it at all, then we don't have to.
Well, I do really like the idea and support the idea that we put something in there that says if our decision is not upheld, that the licensee could get some money back for lost wages. I think that is
Yes.
a good spirit of
Mhm.
our job is to protect the public. We're not trying to harm our licensees in the process, but we do have to do our work, and that is to step in and intervene when something dangerous is happening. But I think that shows that our spirit is not, we're not trying to go looking for people to punish or are going to abuse this at all.
Leave it to 2 or bring it to 5. This is just a draft. There's nothing.
Well, I'll just go ahead and say it. I don't know if we need it officially, but I'll say it officially. I am not in favor of the second statement. The one that's adding, that we would get reimbursement. I am not in favor of that.
Right, because that part is not in there, just another part of the discussion.
Well, let me reframe that. I'm not in favor of adding that.
I mean, and it may be that I agree with you, Janessa. I do wonder if we got into some kind of really unusual situation, like it drug on for a long period of time and the board incurred enormous expenses, legal expenses, to try to work on an appeal. Would we still have the leeway to negotiate reimbursement of some of those costs as part of the settlement, just as we do when there is some investigation with the regular case?
Yes, you could always settle the case overall and include a fine or cost like we always do. So maybe it's just best to leave it out. Also, you can do an administrative regulation that says like what you would pay as an amount for legal services, how you would justify the $2,000, you have to show lost revenue, financial, I mean, you can flesh that out on how you get to that 2,000 by administrative reg.
Well, if we have parameters around how they have to demonstrate it, I would be okay with it saying up to $5,000, something to the effect of the licensee would have to demonstrate or justify or something where there's some documentation of what hours were lost. If they're employed somewhere, that's easier because they have an hourly rate,
Mhm.
have hours. If they're an independent practitioner, then that's a little more challenging, but they might have to provide their tax returns or something. I don't know, that says, this is approximately how much I make every month, and I was out of work for 2 months, and this is about how much and so we would reimburse up to $5,000.
I agree. I like the 5,000 piece of it. It's just us getting reimbursed, especially if there's already a mechanism to do that in the case, that if we would feel the need to do it.
Well, if you're gonna be out of work for 2 months, 5,000 is probably, not
Yeah.
as much as you would have made, but
Right.
for 3 months or 4 months, but it's something substantial at least.
Well,
You realize-
and I would agree with Whitney that it shows that the spirit is that we realize that maybe we were wrong in this and we want to try to make it right. We may not be able to reimburse the entire amount, but we're at least trying. Something is better than nothing.
Go ahead.
Just how rare it would be to be out of practice for 2 months and you ended up winning in the end. You'd have to be immediately temporarily suspended on a Monday, request a hearing by the following Wednesday. Have a 5-day trial, a trial within 5 days. The hearing officer has 5 days to write up the order and you won. Okay, and then it takes a court on judicial appeal 2 months to reverse that. That's just unusual that it would be that far down the pike and that a court would reverse the board. So being out of practice for 2 months is at the far end of what's
Lucky.
really possible. On the other hand, if you were facing that, that would be a good time to settle and say, what is it that the board wants? I can't be out of practice, even though I think I might win in 2 months. That's a long time to roll the dice. So, 5,000 is certainly reasonable, because if the suspension is upheld and not further appealed, or the suspension is upheld and the court does uphold the board, then they're out of practice until the complaint case shakes out.
Been a long time.
Okay. So do we want to include this or not?
Or change the amount.
Change the amount, if we include it, change the amount from 2 to 5,
I think we changed the amount.
okay? All right, so I need a motion.
I make a motion that we change the amount from 2,000 to 5,000.
And include this in our proposal and send it, we'd have to send it to our, other people that are on the, that was on the committee. We need to send it to Children's Alliance to get their impact, their input,
Yes.
and NASW and Clinical Society, because.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Any further discussion? Because I'll need a second.
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 All right, got a second? Mark?
I have a technical question to ask my colleague, and that is, do we need to put in there, shall pay these amounts as set forth by administrative regulation, or can we just do a regulation, even if it doesn't say in that part by regulation?
You've already got regulatory authority elsewhere to put all these chapters into effect. I think you probably have enough regulatory authority elsewhere.
The general.
I agree. I don't think you need to add that. So if someone were questioning, well, how do I prove that I deserve $5,000? Then you can say that will be set by administrative regulation. What kind of proof, how many dollars, what kind of evidence, those kind of things. So.
Okay.
I'm not recommending any changes. I'm saying that's the way it would be.
That's how it would flow out. Okay. All right, all in favor of the motion to adopt this added piece with the change of from 2 to 5?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Opposed? Thank you. The only other question that has been raised about this was an issue of putting in statute that licensees have to have professional liability insurance. Mainly because of that piece about practicing out of country is where it came from. So just to, Mark and I discussed it this morning, and we don't think that that's appropriate for us to do, but wanted to bring that to your attention in case somebody felt that that was necessary to, I just know, so. That's,
I think it would be foolish not to have liability insurance, but I don't.
I think it is, but I think it's kind of a personal business decision risk, not something for statute, so.
It's not related to competency to practice,
Right.
because you could be a
Right.
very, very, very competent social worker
Yeah.
and do a very, very good job all the time.
Yeah.
And not ever have malpractice
Right.
insurance, but you make one mistake.
Yeah.
In 20 years, and it could be $1 million jury verdict. But that's not competency, that's more direct public protection.
So, so anyway, I wanted to bring it up because it's brought up to me that have the board consider it, but I'm like, I'm not really sure that. And I couldn't find any others like psychology board licensing, like any others that were doing that. The closest thing I did find was that, if you're a professional midwife, licensed midwife, you have to have professional liability in Kentucky, but I think that was about the only one I found. It could do an extensive search, but that's all I found, so.
And Hank, is that question coming from credential holders who ask you, does our law make us have malpractice? Because they don't know.
Yeah, because they don't know, and it's like, no, it doesn't. Well, maybe it should, well, we can't, I don't know, I'm just reluctant sometimes with too many things in the statute. That, the broader range of what social workers do, I'm just kind of thinking about the BSW, like LSW licensee having to be required to get professional insurance when maybe they don't need it because of what they're doing. And if they're working for
I'll
an
admit
agency,
I
and
don't
they,
have that,
An agency has, if you work for an agency, they already have it, so why?
That would bring a bunch of new cases to the complaint committee, because
Yeah.
then there would be lots of people saying, oh,
Yeah. Okay.
self-report, I don't have.
Right. And I think that would add an additional burden to the board. It's just something else for them to have to track.
Right.
You know, and that's, and those are renewed yearly and we don't renew license yearly. And so that would be,
Yeah.
it would be an incredible burden.
Yeah, because if it lasts 1 year, do you, I don't know, it would just be too much to try to, I just don't think that's, get it on your own if needed, you know, if you don't,
It's really truly a business
it's business.
aspect and not a competency to practice, because you could be very, very competent and never have liability insurance, and if you never got sued and nobody brought you to a jury verdict, you know, then you were competent.
All right, well, thank y'all very much. This is an interesting discussion, but we need to have those. The next item is the exam, hosting a exam prep workshop that we talked about last meeting, and Vanessa found out we do not have to do an RFP, so we can go ahead and schedule it.
Yay.
Yeah, that's right. So I got dates for you all. I think I sent them to you, but it's a 2-day event. I sent you a bunch of dates in June because as Dr. D. Blacksky, I think I closely pronounced her name right, just Dr. D. So there's 2 days we would have to contract for with her. One day, the first day is for everybody, LS, BSW, MSW, or DSW. And then anybody with a master's or clinical exam come back for the second day. So it'd be June 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th, one of those two, or, June. So pick one and I can get her scheduled and we can start that process.
Hank, remind me again, if you don't mind, what's the limit of the number of people that can be involved in that one?
She did not give me a limit. She said she's had over 100 in a webinar, and I'm thinking that's a lot of people for this kind of work, but we could make our own limit. We can do that ourselves. She doesn't care. We have to guarantee her 35 students or 35 exam prep people. That's what we have to guarantee her is 35 people.
I'm just wondering if we don't need, I mean, this is just on us. This is not related to scheduling, but I'm just wondering if we need to set some parameters on who applies and, I hate to use the word, but who is priority for getting.
We do. One
that.
priority, Janessa, is they have to have applied for a license in Kentucky. This is not open to the nation to take this course. It's people who've applied for a license in Kentucky. They will have to have done it first. Yeah, those parameters we need to talk about.
So to clarify, does that mean that if you're a current student who's about to graduate, you would be ineligible for this?
That's what I was thinking,
For a
Whitney.
license if you haven't graduated.
Well, that's what we'd have to talk about is how we would do students. If there, if there are students in a school in Kentucky, those kind of things we would have to specify. Yeah,
Is this gonna be something we do more than once a year?
that's another question.
Well, that's kind of what we talked about last time is we have to decide on a budget. I think if we start with how much money we can spend, then we will know, can we have 2 of these per year and how many people can we sponsor? That's what I think it's really going to come down to is how much are we comfortable spending? And then we have to work backward from that.
Right.
Well, I think we did talk about doing it at least twice a year, like 6 months apart. Just to make sure that, and if we did it in June and let's say December, then we do tend to favor those that are graduating in May and then those that are finishing up in December because they can apply to go ahead and sit for the exam a little bit earlier, so they would have time to do that. I just think that, and I don't know, maybe this is what Whitney is thinking too, that our students may need to be near the top of the priority list for that.
Yeah.
Because those are the folks that we really want to
Yeah,
push and,
Get them ready for the exam. Yeah.
sure.
Should it be people who haven't passed the exam the first time?
Right.
It'd be
Yes.
for those, for those, it would be for those too, yeah.
Maybe that's the top priority and then we shoot for the students after that. That's a really good point.
we know if she's gone like to some of these, like, I actually took her course when I was at UC when I got my master's. So they did it on campus there and you could register to do it, so it might be offered at other locations.
Right, there is,
Yeah.
yeah, she has a list of,
Yeah.
website on locations. We would just be listed.
Okay,
Well, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I brought some numbers last time where I did some figuring where I was like, okay, if we sponsored this many people, it'd be like $35,000. So I think that's where we have to kind of go, okay, if it's however many dollars per head, we have to figure out how much are we comfortable spending. And then that will dictate how many spots we can offer. And then we can decide how do we prioritize who gets those spots.
Well, I tell you what, why don't today we pick a date so I can get us on the calendar with Dr. D, and then we can take up the details at the next meeting and finance committee can look at some of that and then bring it to the board for the next meeting. That work?
Yep.
All right. What dates are you preferring?
We're not going to be involved in it, right? We're not attending this.
No. Yeah, we don't have to. The first dates are the 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th. June. And our board meeting is June 9th. So do we do a weekend or do we do like no? Because 7th and 8th are weekend.
One thing we might want to consider is usually graduation is at the end of May, and the closer to the beginning of June we have it, may crunch our staff for time if we're trying to process applications of people who have literally just graduated. I don't, just an idea.
What do you think, Bart?
I mean, we can, that day. We can. Just pick a date, we'll work around it.
You want to do like Friday, Thursday and Friday or Saturday and Sunday?
I like the Thursday and Friday,
Okay.
because employers may support that for them. And
That's
yeah,
June
I
5th,
like the
June
Thursday,
5th.
Friday.
June 5th and 6th, we'll go with that. And I'll ask her for a date for December if you want.
I think that's also important to recognize, because depending on whether or not you're a spiritual or a religious person, we may be getting on, Saturdays or Sundays are often Sabbath
right.
days, and we want to avoid that.
I prefer to avoid that, but
Do you think December or January?
well,
I think in the notes it said January.
yeah,
Doing anything in December, it's.
yeah, do it anything in December. It's really
Yeah.
nice. So probably January. So,
Yeah.
and ask for January dates, because we don't have to commit to the January dates until we get this one set up and processed. All right, so motion for doing the workshop at June 5th, 6th with Dr. D.
So moved.
Aye.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we'll have the details on that from financial part next time, so we can have, make parameters around it, its priorities and all that. We catch that. Thank you very much. Meeting dates, you should have a calendar of all the dates. We discussed those dates last time. And the retreats, so we need a motion to adopt those for next year. And select a place for our retreat.
So
May I-
moved.
Yes, second.
Where are we gonna, any changes in the dates, first of all, is Dell still look good for everybody? Okay, all right, so, because once we post them on the website, we kind of committed to it, so. All right, location for the retreat, we went to Northern Kentucky last year, so,
Can
Bowling
I?
Green?
yeah, go ahead.
Yes, come to Bowling Green.
I was gonna say, do we want to come to Bowling Green or do we want to come to Pikeville?
Well, if I can just share maybe possibly an unpopular opinion. I mean, I no longer live in the far end of the state. I'm really more in the central part of the state. But I personally would support a location that is the most central to all of us, because I know last year I had a very long drive to get there, and it was a bit burdensome. So whatever is the closest to all of us would be my vote.
And if that doesn't work, I'm more than happy to have you guys come to Pikeville to see us.
Well, part of this, Janessa, we wanted, when we have the retreat, we wanted to locate, wanted that meeting, the retreat, but then the board meeting the next day, near one of the schools of, social work. So, we would probably want to put Pikeville on that list at some point, so.
Sure.
So this would get Bowling Green, Western Kentucky University, so. Any further discussion?
Oh, and I'm not, I mean, if y'all want to come to Bowling Green, that is awesome. We'd love to host you. People would prefer.
I like Bowling Green.
I like Bowling Green too.
Okay.
Sure,
Alright,
sure, you do.
I do.
alright, need a motion to adopt the retreat location, so Vanessa can get started finding us a place.
March 30th.
And, no, March 30th, 31st.
Sorry, it says 30.
March 30th, Sunday is the retreat.
Oh, board meeting, yeah,
And the board meetings.
they're linked together.
Right.
I'll be.
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second,
Second to adopt the dates and the location, Bowling Green for our retreat and annual meeting next year. All in favor?
Bye.
Any opposed? All right, unanimous. All right. Very good. And moving on to new business.
Can we find a hotel that doesn't have a pool in it? that people-
Yeah.
No pools.
No pools.
I'll contact you for that.
Yeah, right.
I'll contact or I'll talk to our department head about seeing if we can reserve some space on campus if you all want to try to meet. We have Zoom enhanced rooms and space. If you all want to meet on campus, I can check into that.
That's fine. Yeah, all right, check into that. So. cool.
I don't know about Sunday, but Monday, I don't know if we can get into the buildings on Sunday, but Monday, make that work.
Yeah, so. All right, then we'll follow the similar framework, Janessa, we start the meeting on Sunday at 9 o'clock and go to about 4. We'll go to lunch in the middle of that, and then, it's casual. It's a public meeting though, so you do have to keep that in mind. And, we usually end up about 4:30 and then go eat someplace. We decide you're on your own on that payment and you get it per day for that. For both days. Okay, new business, the listening sessions from last meeting. I don't know if anybody had topics and dates. We had toyed with the idea of doing them quarterly, so. Do we want to still do that and set dates for 2025? And topics? Think quarterly is too often or? Okay,
Many people came to the.
on the listening sessions, we've gotten anywhere from, they drift in and out, it's an hour, we introduce the topic and we talk back and forth, it's varied from 20 at one point to 50. So we've had, depends on the topic, so I was thinking that maybe at some point next year, we would do one on that provisional license idea. Just to get more input on that as one idea. Then, come to think of it, we're doing the supervision rate, do we want to do one of them just around the supervision rate? Thoughts?
That would be a good one. I like the idea of quarterly. Though I have to tell you, and setting the topics is fine, but I have to tell you, it kind of concerns me that we go ahead and set them and not leave at least one maybe open, because what if something pops up through the year? Maybe there's something in pop culture, in the news or something that maybe would be relevant that we might want to add in there.
I think we can set the dates and then closer to the time, pick the topic and advertise it,
I like that idea, Hank.
Vanessa, you got a calendar, I got one. Yeah. look at the.
Another topic we might consider would be like common ethical complaint issues or something.
That's a good thought, yeah.
Because licensees may not have a clue, like what are some of the common, unless they attend our meetings or following what we're doing, they may not have any idea. What are some of the most common things that we get complaints about? And it might just be kind of a good refresher on maybe
Yeah.
common things that happen that probably shouldn't be happening.
And I'm wondering, Hank, and not that we want to focus on any one population, but I'm wondering if we might have a listening session that is specifically for students to allow them to talk about, you know, their experiences, things they are concerned about, that sort of thing. I think that could give us some amazing insight as to that student experience that maybe we aren't aware of.
Sure, yeah, okay, making a note
And,
here.
and that also allows us to go ahead and start building a relationship with them prior to them even applying, you know, to
Sure.
get a license, and seeing that the board is there to support them. And, you know, just that, I think it would help go a long way in establishing what our relationship should look like with them, rather than them seeing us as this abstract meanie board out there that just monitors everything they do. Right. And that is what a lot of our students think. They have this idea that it's this abstract group of people out there that are just, you know, they've got their regulatory masks on and they're not human anymore. And we don't want them to think that about us. And they really do. Whitney, I'm sure you could agree with me. They really do have that idea. And so that's why so many of them are even afraid to apply for a license. I don't even know if it's so much the exam, is they worry about all the regs and making sure they're doing everything. So I think this might go a long way in creating a pipeline of people that are more comfortable with the board, but also, you know, just letting them see us as a group of people there that are there to protect the public, but we're also there to support them and to help
Right.
them be successful.
Sure, yeah, okay.
Just an idea.
Yeah, I've made a note for myself on that one, so. Another one I thought about is like, you know, toward the end of the year, might have one on just about the compact stuff, because that's gonna there's gonna be some questions about that, so that's more than 4 topics, people, so we got plenty for next year.
Well, and maybe even, you know, if there's more that we need to do, we can. Maybe
Yeah.
the student one is just a separate bonus.
No, right, it may be, it would be
Yeah.
good, I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Looking at the calendar, I was thinking maybe would like February 7th, we've done them on Fridays, like the lunch hour kind of thing is what we've done, and that seems to be a good time, so. February 7th, maybe?
Okay, I'm gonna throw out another idea here. You guys are gonna
Sure.
hate me. I'm just full of things. And I get the idea of the lunch hour idea, but I'm wondering if we shouldn't have some of those maybe in the early evening hours. I think about folks that really can't take their lunch hour to do it.
Yeah, that's a thought.
Yeah, and so maybe, you know, we alternate some of those. They're in the early evening hours.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
because we want everybody to feel like they have an opportunity and to feel heard. And we're dealing with a few time zones here, so that's another
Right.
issue.
that's the issue with, and even the lunchtime thing, because we make it 11:30 for Eastern, it's 10:30 Central, so it's not really lunchtime. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Just an idea. We, you know,
Yeah.
making sure we're able to include as many people as possible.
Would like to pick on social work month, but everything else happens in social work month, so going on to April. Is April 11th a possibility? It's another Friday, we might make that one an evening one.
I'm sorry, Hank, what was the February date?
February 7th,
Thank you.
that gets Q1 and 2. Kind of close, but anyway. Cause like, I don't know whether we want to try anything in July, probably not. And so we probably have to skip to August or September for Q3.
November?
Well, because we probably ought to look at. November or October for the last one, because we, November, we got delegate assembly,
Oh, that's right.
and then,
October is probably the best month for that
yeah.
one.
Well, let's look at October dates here.
The only day, only issue and I don't have to be at these, I've been, I think, to the other ones. We're scheduling these on days that I have department meetings, so I don't know that I can be on these dates, but
Okay,
it just depends on what time they are.
all right, let's just tentatively set October the 24th. It's toward the end of October, and then maybe do,
I think that might be an issue. That's when the CSWE APM is.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, just get some ideas here. Okay, well, complete some dates again. We can discuss it again at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Finalize the topics. So we'll maybe do topics at a time, ahead of time. We don't have to do them all for the whole year. I mean, that's not necessary. We can just do it for the next one. Pick a topic, so we can try to stay a little more current, so. All right, thank you all. You should have in your packet, a draft copy of it. We've done staff evaluations, so it's time now to start doing our evaluation for contractors. So we have two contractors. We have the Scanlon contract for investigation and contract with Mark Bringman for legal assistance, so. Those are the two that are there for draft. Look those over, see if there's any changes to be made on that, and then we can look at approving them at the next meeting. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Okay, all right. Any further business that needs to come before this board? All right, announcements.
So if anybody's interested, the mental health insurance reform task force is going to meet this Wednesday at 11 a.m. It's a great group. All mental health providers, including like therapists. A bill has been drafted from legislative session to try to look at how we can improve access and reimbursements and all clawbacks, all that stuff. Also, 1 o'clock on Wednesday, continuing with lobby day planning. Have some really cool ideas that we're gonna have to kind of hook in to early on into the new semester. So we're excited about that. Regarding the licensure exam course, if there's anything you all want us to help do in terms of put some money in and with Dawn Athbar to schedule something. But I would also recommend for the CSWs who are taking that to test for the LCSWs is offering CEUs for those 2 days. If possible, because I think that's what we've done, and that gets, especially when you're looking at workers trying to get off of work, that could also be a help. And just one other thought when we're talking about malpractice insurance, is there anything on the application for CSWs with working towards their LCSW that has anything on there? Just kind of a reminder, we encourage everyone to make sure that they're covered by their agency insurance plan. It's not giving an endorsement, it's not saying anything regulatory, but I think a lot of people don't think about that, and even people who are getting covered by their work, they really need to make sure that they're,
But they are covered.
that. Yeah, right, so just, yeah,
The other thing about your agency liability is that first thing you have to keep in mind is that your agency's liability is gonna cover the agency.
Yeah,
it,
Not
exactly.
Always,
they find out done something wrong.
if they,
Exactly.
so, it's always that tension, do I carry my own just because,
Lobby day is 2/25/25, and also the National NASW conference is gonna be rotated every odd year, so it'll be in Chicago in June. Woo.
Yeah.
So there you go, you don't have to drive to DC, just drive to Chicago, you
Yeah.
get pizza with us.
yeah. And I'll put a proposal in for that conference.
Yes.
New paradigm. Such work, new paradigm with artificial intelligence. Should be interesting. Because it's still a wild world out there. Anyway,
Wild West, yes, thank you
And,
all,
Harry-
everything you do, happy
yeah,
holidays.
thank y'all. Y'all have a holiday. Thanks, Vanessa.
You're
Yes, thank you very much. This is
Happy
cute.
holidays.
Need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
See you
Next year.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Thank y'all. Vanessa, thank y'all. Oh. Good.
So, met a really cool, young, not young, CSW, early thirties,
That's it.
yeah, that is young, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
still young.
You are, it's a little baby, yes.